can look for this opportunity number. You could also just go into our website. There's a link right to it. It's anticipated we'll probably fund about 3 at $75,000 as we have in the past, and that would be a total of $225,000. So we're looking at funding some projects with that. And you might find it peculiar that I mentioned proposals are due at 11:59, but once the clock hits that midnight, it's no longer going to accept it because it's considering it the next day. So just be sure if you do apply through that site that you are doing it well in advance of the deadline, so your submission makes it in. If you are an entity registering in that system of award management, you want to plan ahead because registration in there can take up to 21 days. So definitely start early. The notice of funding opportunity I just showed you, that's been out for a while and it closes at the end of this month. So hopefully if you're somebody that's looking to apply, you already have that well underway. Registering in SAM allows you to obtain a unique identifying number, as I mentioned, and that system of award management registration can be found at the link that's shown, and it's something that you need to update or annually renew. Then when you go into grants.gov, at that site and hit register, you'll be able to add your organization applicant profile and apply following the instructions in the notice of funding opportunity. An application package contains several things: the application form, and then the project narrative, which is basically the proposal of what you plan to do and how you're going to measure success and what you hope to get out of it. Team qualifications, so how your team is qualified, an assessment of environmental impacts, and a declaration of previous CIG projects that you might have been involved in and the performance on those. Then there are additional things that go in there. So a declaration of historically underserved and veteran farmers if you're working with farmers to do your project. Budget information found in the standard form 424A. So what is your budget? What are the categories? We also require a match, so you need to show your one-to-one match as well. The budget narrative, which outlines how you're going to spend the funds that you show in the Excel form there. A lobbying form, statement of current and pending support, disclosure of lobbying activities, and if you're using it, a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. It says your rate for indirect costs, and disclosure of any potential conflict of interest. This is showing you page 2 of the budget form, so you can see there are different categories for budget, and you would have your federal amounts through your agreement and then what you would be matching on your side. So that gives you an idea of how that works in terms of categories of budget items, and then the totals are at the bottom. As I mentioned, there is a matching requirement of 1-to-1. So your project would be 50% funded federally, or up to 50% funded, because you could include more of your own funds. And I do mention here that it's required to be a 1-to-1 match of non-federal sources with cash or in kind. So sometimes that is staff hours as well as other purchased items. The deliverables. So every project is going to have deliverables, what we require at the end and what you're working towards. So they will need to be clearly outlined in the agreement. And throughout the course of the project, you would report your progress on them. So this is typically done at least twice a year. In some cases, they're quarterly reports. You need to meet all of your deliverables by the expiration date on the agreement. They're typically 3-year agreements, although you can request an extension 1 year at a time, up to 5 years. And you need to include an accounting of how you met these deliverables in the final report before closeout at the end of the agreement. So as far as the how we evaluate these applications, we receive them from the Grants and Agreements Division, so we don't accept them in-house. They come through that website that I mentioned, through grants.gov. The grant folks review them and send us a packet of, well, it's not really a packet, it's an online packet with the different packages. And then we review them with a technical panel, looking at the whole project. with 100 points total that could be earned. So they are ranked with panelists from the state office in those fields that are related to the categories we're looking for. And then the criteria mentioned below, we're evaluating on the purpose, approach, and goals, the innovative technology or approach, project management, and then, of course, the benefits and transferability of the project itself. There are some expectations, of course, if you're awarded an agreement, and that is that you would comply with the state, local, and federal regulations and ordinances, including the Endangered Species Act, Natural Historic Preservation Act, Clean Water Act, NEPA, and applicable laws. So you will need to implement any required environmental and cultural resource mitigation and monitoring, depending how that relates to your sites. Provide technical assistance towards project implementation, and comply with requirements of the grant, executive orders, circulars, everything related to having a federal grant. So if you are doing a project that involves working with farmers or folks on the landscape, you will have to ensure that they are EQIP eligible. So eligible for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And in doing that, you typically go to your local service center, your local NRCS field office, you meet with the Farm Service Agency, and you fill out certain forms like adjusted gross income, highly erodible land, wetland conservation, and ensure you have this EQIP eligibility. Because as I mentioned, these are Environmental Quality Incentives Program funds, and if some of those funds are going out to the farmer to do work on the landscape, we of course want to make sure we're in line with our own regulations. You would submit a list of EQIP eligible producers receiving direct or indirect payments as part of your reports. So for your semi-annual progress reports, as well as your final report. And we want to ensure that payments to EQIP eligible producers do not exceed individual EQIP payment limitations. Go ahead.
And I guess on this point, we did talk to the grant management team, and you don't have to know, you have names when you apply.
Right.
EQIP eligible names when you apply, but.
Yes. I think a question came in, do you have to have EQIP farmers, or do you have to have farmers at all? So you don't, but if you are working with farmers on the landscape, they do have to have this eligibility. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
So you will be providing written performance progress reports, and those would be given to myself, the CIG program manager, and the technical contact. Each agreement has a technical contact that would be overseeing the topic of interest in the agreement. And those will come in every 6 months, or more often if you want to report on your progress every month, every 2 months, as you do something. That is acceptable as well. But for some of our systems, we need to at least have them in there twice a year. Of course, folks want to know how they would get paid. Similar to our other programs, you would do the work and get the expense and then submit a claim. So that's a standard form 270. You would submit a claim with supporting documentation that details the work you performed and provides that backup of why you're requesting those expenses. So we look at those and match things up. That would go to the program contact for CIG, which would be myself. Wendy Karish is also helping at the state office with those. And we would comply with requests for information from all of the assigned contacts. In addition to the progress reports and the claims, you would of course have financial reports that indicate how you're spending your funds, and those would come in at least twice a year to the CIG program manager, according to what it says in your agreement. And those must match up to your previous financial report and the payments made to date. So they do get returned to you if the numbers don't seem to jive with what we have on file. It's usually completed in conjunction with the progress report and the reimbursement report. And then at the end, as I mentioned, you do provide a final report. So sometimes we have great successes, sometimes not so much, but we do want to know what the challenges were, and make sure you include anything like a fact sheet or things that were produced. And those need to be submitted within 120 days after the completion of the grant. So we always ask that it's submitted earlier so we have time to review it and get back to you. So that's kind of a quick overview of conservation innovation grants. As I said, you can find that on our website. We have a current notice of funding opportunity out. but it does close at the end of the month, July
Week from
31st.
today.
Yes, so, just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. Are there any questions right now or anything else anybody want to add anything?
I would just add that, knowing you, if you call Ashley, she can help you walk through that. It seems complicated and it does tend to be, but I think sometimes we can help with that complication by walking our grantees through things.
Well, feel free to call if you have questions. I've certainly been fielding questions. Thanks.
Any questions from the group? Okay, thank you, Ashley. And our next presentation is about training opportunities. I'm just gonna make an adjustment here with my system. If this is not working, put that on your checklist.
Well, I was gonna run if you want it.
No, I've got it, but this table is not, I have to make sure these tables are plugged in. No, yeah. Anyway, watch the cords.
Watch the cord, okay.
Mm.
We can do that.
All right, good afternoon. As mentioned before, I'm Tim Peters and my cohort here, Dan Ludwig. We're here to talk about training opportunities in Pennsylvania. Something that we spend a lot of our time doing, a lot of time prepping for, and then presenting, and probably one of the more important things we do too, in our opinion. So I should speak for myself, in my opinion, where we're developing younger staff or newer staff or staff that could use some new technical skills to implement conservation. Did you do that or did I?
I
do that?
did. No, I did.
Well, you're moving me right along.
I'm
Go
happy.
ahead, Susan.
No, go ahead.
So we wanted to talk about in-state offered courses, and that is a typo. That does not mean Indiana state courses. That meant Pennsylvania. I just have too many capital letters there in my bullet. We also wanted to briefly mention a couple nationally offered NRCS trainings that we have brought to Pennsylvania in the past and continue to cycle through, bringing one or two each year to the state. And then we also want to hit on the job training and mentoring. We do these formal trainings and they're great. We give a good awareness. We present some good technical topics, but it doesn't stop there. People need to keep developing those skills. How do you do that? On the job training and mentoring. We've tried to provide avenues that staff can take advantage of to continue to develop technically. And then finally, wanted to summarize some training contributions that the NRCS agency in Pennsylvania has provided to our staff and partner staff.
So I'll start off with one of the beginning trainings that a lot of our new staff and a lot of new partner staff participate in, and that's our Introduction to Conservation Planning training. And that's been around for over 10 years now. When we first brought this training to Pennsylvania, it was actually through a contractor, and through something falling apart with the contractor, we inherited this training back. So, and we've had this going since, so we've been the lead on it since 2019. But it's really meant to be an introductory course, and it's for those NRCS and partner employees that are looking to learn about conservation planning and earning their conservation planner designation. So, and those designations go anywhere from a level 1, which is what we call just a conservation planner, through a level 3, which is our certified conservation planner. And then we have up to a level 4, which is an area-wide conservation plan. And, and again, this course is really meant for learning the basics about conservation planning. It's not really a conservation 101. We don't get into specific practices. We don't talk about how to check out practices. It's really about learning the basics of that conservation planning. So for those of you that don't know, with our conservation planning, there's 9 steps. Many of us, even that have been around for 20 plus years, sometimes have a hard time remembering all 9 steps. I admit I don't always get them right either, but and that's the foundation that we use for conservation planning, are these 9 steps. So this training is really geared towards teaching what those 9 steps are at that introductory level. And usually when it comes to the basis behind conservation planning and what our planners do is look for resource concerns. So what is it on the landscape that is a resource concern on the farm, And that's broken down into what we call SWAPA plus H&E. So those major resource concerns are soil, water, air, plants, animals, plus our human and energy. And then what does it mean? What do we say that is a successful conservation plan? A successful conservation plan is where we've identified those resources, taken that to the producer, have had them make a decision on how they're going to do that, and make sure that what they're agreeing to do meets planning criteria. So planning criteria is what we use to judge whether or not an activity is solving that resource concern. And throughout this training, it's a 3-day training. We spend about half the time in the classroom, half the time out in the field. But we go over we look at resource concerns and evaluating resource concerns on cropland, pasture, farmstead, and forests. So, like I said in the beginning, we do, and basically the whole basis of this is to introduce what a conservation plan is and what they actually mean for those producers. So just talk about our contributions, seems how Tim had mentioned that. So throughout the year, this course takes about 9 different trainers. So it's handled mainly through ecological sciences. We do invite an engineer to come play with us for part of it, but the engineers are critical for the farmstead and looking at those resource concerns. But between our ecological sciences staff, and then we do pull some field staff to help with that as well. But you can see over time, this year in 2024, we actually were having 2 sessions. So we did the session in May, just because the demand for this training has really picked up, especially with our partners. So we did a session in May and had 30 folks. You can see the breakdown. Again, it's a lot more partners than NRCS. And then traditionally we do this training in November. So that's our 2023 training. Well, actually it should be this first training of 2024, my bad. But in 2023, we had a full house, so 33 folks, 14 NRCS, 19 partners, and then going back to 2022, 25, and again, you can see NRCS versus partners. So this is one where we try to be around 30 people, and consistently, we're at almost max capacity each time.
And our trainings really do build on each other. So Intro to Conservation Planning is a very early training, a fan favorite for many staff. Following that would be our Boot Camp Level 1 training, which is our Ag Conservation Technical training. And with this course, this is an annually run course. We have run it multiple times in recent years because of the demand. I think that's a reoccurring theme, is that there's a need to do a lot of training. There's a lot of people that would benefit from training. So we've tried to accommodate that in the past couple of years. But this training is typically held annually, and it includes 3 virtual days and 4 in-person days in Lewisburg. It used to be held in Southeast PA, but we made a transition to Central PA and Lewisburg to see some different farms in some different parts of the state, and that's been a good change for us. The training really is a big partnership. It's a big partnership between the SEC, PACD, the State Conservation Commission, PACD, and then NRCS. And PACD helps with logistics. They do all the organization, registrations and lining up rooms and having snacks and food ready, those types of details. And then the SEC and NRCS help provide the funding for that course to happen. Recently, this training, let me take a step back, has been going on since the early 2000s. I think it started in 2000 or 2001. So we have a long history of presenting this training, and it has evolved over time. We try to bring new topics into the training as it becomes apparent that there's a need for new skills or new trainings. And we try to have it build on the other trainings, like I mentioned with Dan's Intro to Conservation Planning. But last year, with the need for the staff that would need this course, we started partnering with some Penn State Extension instructors. And so the course, starting last year for one of the sessions that we ran, and then this year, just about half the instructors were Penn State Extension and the other half were NRCS, where up until last year, NRCS provided pretty much all of the instructions. So that's been a good partnership. We've been trying to use and get help from Penn State Extension, where they have some expertise that applies to the training. So the topics that we do cover, though, always have been laws and regs, We have a talk or a field session on basic soils. Your plowing in the back of the room is a huge part of that. We talk about resource tools. We talk about different topics that would include introduction to cropland, introduction to livestock, introduction to pasture management, introduction to fish and wildlife. Those are all sessions, and then we have some field activities that go along with those. We introduced a couple years ago basic survey skills, where we kind of came to the realization that some field staff weren't coming into their careers with those skills already. So we started having some, it's a field session and then some topics on using basic survey equipment, laser levels and automatic levels, and just understanding the concepts behind surveying. We also have a field visit to soil pits, and we have visits to pastures to talk about pasture concerns, resource concerns, and then also crops. We have a visit to see some crop fields. And then we also have a day that talks about basic hydrology skills. The engineers from the state office go out and they present some different topics on watersheds, and then they go in the field and they lay out some terraces, and they talk about where the water's going and how that watershed's really interacting with the conservation practices that we're trying to implement. And numbers for this course, I'll just highlight. Total trainers, this is the recent years, we had 23 NRCS instructors involved in bringing that course to the people attending, and we included 12 Penn State instructors. And the attendees, it's interesting to see. We this year we trained 36 total, 7 NRCS and 29 partners. Last year in 2023, we trained a total of 91, which was a huge amount for us. We ran the session 3 times, and we had 23 NRCS attendees and 68 partners. And then in 2022, the year before, it was 34, which had been about the number that we would typically see. And that was 16 NRCS and 18 partners.
You didn't ask anybody why it's called boot camp.
I did not ask any. Does anybody know why it's called boot camp? Those in the room can probably answer a little bit easier than those online. But does anybody know why it's called boot camp? That's a great question.
Because you get dirty and do exercises in the field?
No, sorry. Next. Nice try.
Uh-huh.
It's held at Fort Indian Town Gap. And the early years, the attendees actually stayed in the housing that would be represented by Fort Indian Town Gap. Yes, do you have something?
The early years? Oh,
Were you the early years?
apparently.
I was the early years too. So we used to stay on base, and the accommodations were not quite as nice as the Holiday Inn that people stay in now. But it was a great team building experience, right? And really, really good. So we have evolved. Like I said, it evolves, and we now have attendees stay in hotels that are nearby. But the Boot Camp 2 training, good segue, is still held at Fort Indian Town Gap. The attendees stay in hotels, but we are housed, or the home base is out of Fort Indian Town Gap, the Keystone Conference Center, which is a great facility, nice views, and a good central location for us to use. Mm-hmm. Now, the Boot Camp Level 2 training, this is a training that would be taken by employees who have attended Boot Camp 1, and then the following year, we would bring them into Boot Camp Level 2. So this is just building on Boot Camp Level 1, taking participants to the next step, a little bit more technically involved. We're throwing a little bit more at participants with Boot Camp Level 2. What we started doing is 2 virtual mornings that introduce topics, and then we have 5 in-person days for Boot Camp Level 2. Once again, big partnership between the State Conservation Commission, PACD, and NRCS, just like Boot Camp Level 1. In fact, a lot of the logistics and planning for Boot Camp 1 and Boot Camp 2 happen all together simultaneously. But NRCS is the primary instructors for this. We do talk a lot of topics that are inherently NRCS, and so we do provide almost all of the instruction. And the topics that you would hear at Boot Camp Level 2 are actually, yes, there you go. The topics that everybody would hear at Boot Camp Level 2 would include these topics that I've noted here. We really hit the avoid, control, trap approach to conservation. How are we addressing resource concerns? Are we first avoiding? If we can't avoid, are we controlling? And then finally, are we trapping those nutrients before they leave? We also talk about financial assistance. We do talk about financial assistance that's offered through the state, through NRCS and several avenues. So we have a couple presenters that hit that. And we do talk about Child Approval Authority. That's something big that NRCS staff are involved in. So we do have a quick talk about JAA. Other topics that we hit as a group would include advanced forestry concepts and ag waste planning. We also introduced some economic tools in recent years. We hired a state economist in Pennsylvania, and so she's introduced some new topics. So that was a big addition for us at boot camp level 2. And then we do have field activities for the entire group, which really focus on addressing resource concerns via some field rotations at a farm. So we try to go to a farm where there are some known resource concerns. It's maybe a farm that's in the process of working through a contract with NRCS, and we're able to see some resource concerns there. In some of the earlier trainings, we're maybe feeding the answers to participants. Where boot camp level 2, we're really trying to make this an activity where the participants are coming up with the answers themselves, where they're really identifying the resource concerns. We have instructors there to help shepherd them to the right direction and have some good conversations, but we really want the students to be interactive and really bring the answers themselves. And then we recently introduced a urban farm rotation as part of boot camp 2. So on the last day, we started going to an urban farm in Harrisburg, and that's been a really good addition, as that's a new initiative that we're really trying to grow and expand within NRCS, and I believe other partners as well. So there's a need to teach on it, and we decided that was a good fit for boot camp 2. Now, what I didn't say yet is that boot camp level 2 actually has 2 tracks. There's an agronomic track, which is kind of headed by Dan and his team, where they're focused on ecological sciences type of conservation work, and then there's an engineering track. So participants get split into one of 2 groups. Engineering and agronomy, the agronomic people, they met at the state office for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the in-person week. The engineers met at the Keystone Conference Center for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then the group came together on Thursday and Friday for these topics, the urban farm rotation and the resource concern. So the agronomic track would be hitting more topics that are related to soil health and soil quality practices. Our state agronomist, Mark Goodson, plays a big role in getting those topics hit, and then Yuri Plavin as well with soils. We talk about advanced soils with field rotations, where Yuri and her team have a couple of soil test pits at a farm, and we get to look at those and the differences that they're seeing. And then we talk about advanced pasture planning, and design tools with our state grazing specialist. And a lot of good technical topics happen there. On the engineering side, this is really what I love. The participants are going to hear about basic hydraulics concepts. So we talk about designing roof gutters. We talk about designing underground outlets, some very simple conservation practices that would involve hydraulics, and kind of taking some of the concepts of boot camp 1 and taking it to the next step in boot camp 2. We talk about soils and engineering. So engineers, we look at soils differently than our soil scientists do. Engineers, we want to look at soils as a building material. We want to be able to take it, manipulate it, make it into what we need it to do, compact it, add moisture, take moisture away. And so we really look at that in the Unified Soils Classification System. So we're focused on really presenting soils as an engineering property as part of the engineering track. And then we have a day where we go to some construction sites. We try to find active construction in the vicinity of the Keystone Conference Center at Fort Town Gap, and we'll take the students on a rotation where they're really talking about quality control and quality assurance, the role that the contractor plays for ensuring good work happens, and the role that NRCS or partners would play when inspecting the work. And they also, as part of that day, go to a concrete plant and do some basic concrete testing. So to ensure that good concrete is being placed. Good skills to have for sure. And numbers for boot camp level 2. So we have 27 NRCS instructors that do boot camp 2. So it is a lot of staff hours, and it's a big effort by the agency to put this on. Attendees in 2024, we ran 2 sessions of boot camp 2. So we had 57 total attend, 18 of which were NRCS and the Balance partners. In the year before, we had 34, and the year before that, we had 26 total. And the breakdown you can see there. But in 2023, about half and half, and then the year before, a little bit more NRCS than partners. All right, Dan, back to you.
So, and I also throw in, you can kind of see the process that we're going through, the progression, more is a better word, the progression. So we take our intro, our new planners, and as they're coming up, what is one thing that they should be gaining as they're going through these trainings? Experience. So, and that's one thing that we're really pushing and hoping that people find the value in our training is to make, they get experience prior to coming to the training, and then they build on those training concepts to increase their knowledge and all that. So, so it's really a good building block to make sure that our folks have time in the field, have been, they should see some exposure to some of this before coming to the training. So, but again, it's that, I just like to point out that building block kind of system that we have out there. As digressing into conservation planning part 2. So that is commonly known as certified planner training. Those of us that have been around for a long time, it's always been called certified planner training. The formal name is conservation planning part 2. And this is that final course before an individual receives their level 3 certified conservation planner designation. That's the gold star. In conservation planning, that's what you're trying to achieve, is being that level 3 planner. So, as you start on and they used to call it apprentice, and it was a good term, but they changed it. But you still can write conservation plans. With the level 3 means that you can independently write a conservation plan and sign off on your own work. So that's why we kind of call it the gold standard, because you can go out there as an individual and do your conservation planning. It takes a lot of work to get there. I get a lot of questions on how soon can I become a level 3 planner. Well, as you can see here, there's 34 trainings that are required in order for you to meet this standard. I guess not meet the standard, but to get to that level. Nice thing is the bulk of them are online through our AgLearn system. So there's 26 online webinars or trainings. Some of those are just hour-long webinars. Some take several days to get through. And then we also have 8 in-person trainings related to soil health and cultural resources. And then we also build upon and use boot camp as a requirement, and also some of the Act 38 trainings like the ACA training and the Stormwater Russell training done through Act 38. So again, this training really reiterates the 9 steps of planning. So we introduce it in intro to planning, but then as Tim mentioned, talking about boot camps and all that, this is where we pretty much, again, are shepherding the folks there. Because by time you're coming to that training, you should have been working somewhat independently. But when we come to the training, we reiterate the concepts, but then we take you to the field and turn you loose to go out and look at those resource concerns, start developing an idea of how to put together a conservation plan. Training's only a week in State College, so we can't really write a full conservation plan, but we make you go through all those steps and do a presentation at the end and work through stuff like the environmental evaluation, giving you those final steps on how you fill that out, talk about job approval again, what it takes to get and maintain that. And then we also talk about practice certification. Again, we're still not really focused on specific practices, but we talk about what skills you need to go out and successfully certify practices as completed, and if they're under financial assistance, to be able to make that payment. So again, we usually use about 9 different instructors. Again, we invite our engineers to come out and work with us, because again, we're still covering those 4 main land uses: cropland, pasture, farmstead, and forestry. And our numbers have been fluctuating in a bit over the years. Last year was one of our lowest numbers, and that just is all dependent upon where staff are and being ready to take that last training. So we had 8 folks, again, more NRCS folks than partners. In 2022, we had 18. Notice that we had 1 TSP. So this training is actually for a TSP that wants to be a CNMP planner or a conservation planner. They have to have this training. It's an in-person training. So we do have TSPs come to this course. And then in fiscal year 21, we had about 12 folks. Again, still at this point, highly attended by NRCS, a few partners. But again, we're committed to any of the partners that want to become certified planners. We see a lot of them at intro through boot camps, but then they're not following through with certified planners. So, but just want to let everybody know that is an option, and we do support partners reaching that level.
So a lot of people are familiar with the planner trainings and the boot camps, but we also wanted to highlight a couple other trainings that happen within Pennsylvania. First one, I'm not going to talk too long about, but we do have the cultural resources training, and we have on staff within Pennsylvania, a state archaeologist, a cultural resources specialist, and he leads this training pretty much by himself. He gets some help from SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office.
And sometimes folks from other states.
Okay, and other states as well. Yes, thank you. And before Christopher, we really relied on other states a lot. Now, with this training, we are defining cultural resources. We talk about federal laws and policies that need to be followed whenever federal interest is involved in the project. He does spend time talking about the interaction that happens with the State Historical Preservation Office, and that's a big part of his job, is interacting with them. And then he talks about some common cultural resources that could be found on farms. And you see a picture here where some of the participants are practicing going through some screening out to see what they find from a test pit on a farm. And he tries to do that at sites where, or sometimes he even throws in some fake cultural resources for them to find. So a lot of fun there. And he has run that twice this year in fiscal year 20, sorry. He ran it once last week and it's being run again in September. Typically this would be an annual training, but because of the need, he is running it twice, and up to 30 attendees is what he can take. So real good training and good awareness of cultural resources. We also have been running basic Civil 3D training, AutoCAD training. So that's something that newer technical staff on the engineering side may need. That's a skill they may not come in to the agency or wherever they're working from college. When I went for engineering school at Penn State, I didn't have any AutoCAD classes as part of my curriculum. So you would think maybe you would, but a lot of graduates don't. So we are providing CAD training. It's been a 2.5, 3-ish day long training, kind of depends on the group and how much, how fast they can go through the content. But we have a state CET who runs this and oversees it, and he gets help from some good CAD users from across the state. And they've been running it about once a year, but it's kind of one of those things that we'll run it as much as we need. If there's a need for it, we can run it more often. We keep these sessions small. Typically it's 8 to 10 people. When we're doing CAD training, there's a lot of, leaning over shoulders and showing where to scroll to or what buttons to click. And so we do keep that small with a lot of trainer to usually about 2 or 3 students per trainer that could help out, which works really well. And it is scheduled next for December in Lewisburg. We've got a nice training facility there. So if anybody does have a need for that, that's something that we could get a partner hooked up with, as well as NRCS staff. Oh man, my text doesn't look very good there. But another thing that we do is the annual engineering workshop. And this is a virtual session that we've been running for many years now. And we try to use this session to hit newer minor technologies. So if there's a new technology out there that we want to highlight to a group of engineers, then we usually do that through the engineering workshop. If there are changes or something new within the engineering world that we need to highlight, we often use this workshop. It's attended by a lot of partners, a lot of NRCS staff, a lot of consultants. Other states attend this as well. And okay. I think Susan's telling me to move fast, but it looks like she's telling me to pause. So, we do offer PE, PDH credits, which is really good. Engineers like to get that. And so they attend, but we've been typically averaging over 100 participants for this. I think we had 130 this past year, and real good session. I'll quickly say Act 38, we lead the ACA manure storage training. And I love this training. This is one of my favorites, where it's half a day, virtual, pretty much a full day in the field, where we go to a bunch of farms and we talk about animal concentration areas, we talk about pasture, and we talk about when you have a situation that would fall into one of those categories. Are you maintaining vegetation? If you aren't, you're probably in an ACA, an animal concentration area is what we would define it as. And then we spend a lot of time talking about, is it an issue? Is it an inadequate practice or a resource concern? And then we talk about BMPs that could be used to address it. So a ton of fun. And I think everybody should attend that if they get the opportunity. So, national trainings. I mentioned in the beginning, we do bring some national trainings to the state each year. These usually come in a rotation. We try to bring one of these per year. And then when we bring it to the state, national instructors come in, they fly in, and they partner with some state trainers and can give some good topics. They're typically about a week long: concrete fundamentals, construction inspection for field office activities, construction inspection for project activities. So field office activities, more of the conservation type work we're doing, and the project activities more along the lines of a dam rehab. So a little bit bigger scale with a little bit different inspection needs there, but real applicable to anybody doing inspection anywhere. And then liner training, which is coming in 2 or 3 weeks to Pennsylvania. So liner design for animal waste containment. If you're using an HDPE line, manure storage, this is the training for you. And a really good course that we're glad to have in Pennsylvania. And then also have to say, the areas run their own specific trainings throughout the year as well. So the engineering offices, the area engineers lead different trainings. They typically rotate through different topics, such as more advanced surveying topics, construction inspection topics that are maybe a little bit more advanced than what we cover in boot camp. Some more advanced hydrology topics and using hydrology tools, water system training, terrace and grouse waterway design. And they are often reacting or typically reacting to training needs that they've identified for their areas. So real good to have that and technical staff that are able to handle those trainings. And then, oh man, how exciting is it to have on-the-job training and to help facilitate on-the-job training? NRCS has the ACES retired cadre. That's a partnership as well. Those folks are with the SCC, but they are available to do some mentoring and training on the job if an employee needs it. So really want to highlight that. We have 6 on staff right now. Most are engineers. One is an ecological sciences district conservationist who retired and have worked in the state office as well. They have various availability, but if somebody has interest, reach out to me, Tim Peters, and we can try to get you connected to somebody that is available, and they can help out with working through a project or introducing new topics, or kind of if there's a need, we can try to find a way to get some on-the-job training through them or through technical staff that exist in the areas. Back to Dan.
So just a few minutes, because I know Susan's really getting ready to give us the hook, but
I'm giving you the.
Denise is standing there.
oh, we're not
You're
getting
in trouble.
Keep going.
Well, the one person that's not here talking is Yuri, and I feel it's important that Yuri, I'm gonna put her on the spot. But she does at least 3 to 4 trainings a year just on soils. And so that is, Yuri, why don't you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think where we hear from the partnership community is they know boot camp and they know the planning training. But I think what happens is we do a lot of wetland training and we do a lot of soil training. And that is more, we'd like to publicize that a little bit. We have a lot of partners participating in that, but just a little bit. Yuri, you want to take it over?
Yeah, I was waiting to see that come up on this presentation, that we do a soil health training. And that's part of a requirement for certified planners. That's a week-long training, and we work with Dan's staff, with Mark Goodson, the state agronomist, and we have a soil health cadre that helps to deliver that training. That is a national course, though, that we have learned to deliver ourselves here in PA. The other things that don't get talked about, like Denise said, are wetland trainings. So we have a tremendous partnership with Army Corps of Engineers and DEP, and we do several wetland trainings every year. A basic wetland identification, we did 2 this year because there was so much demand. We'll also do an advanced wetland training, which we haven't quite opened up the registration for that. We'll do plant identification, wetland plant identification training. We'll do hydric soils training, and then and those are open to our partners as well as to regulatory and our own staff. And then our resource soil scientists will do individual soils trainings in each of their areas. So those are some of the highlights that didn't get covered here.
Thank you, Yuri. Yep. So I want to go back on this because we've had a longstanding history, and we have, but we put it on steroids probably in about 2012, and it precedes these guys. But it precedes. It's always been something that we've actively done. And the call to this was, we had a deputy secretary for water with DEP, and the requirement that conservation plans had to be developed for each and every farm. And so my response back to her is, I can't write you a plan with NRCS help. I can't write you a plan. That's an unfunded mandate from a federal perspective. I don't get paid to do that. But what we can do is we can teach you to plan, and we can teach you to fish, basically. So this is our the federal agency's response to that request. We have not been able to write all the plans out there. But this is a way to train people, and the cadre, whether it be partnership, whether it be conservation district staff, whether it be ag preservation folks, whether it be, DEP, our non-governmental organizations like Pheasants Forever. This is our answer to that request. So if you haven't, taken advantage of the training, and I often hear that we don't offer enough. I think we do, but I think that it's oversubscribed. And I wanted to do a big shout out to Jen Fetter and Doug Wolfgang, who formed the part of this center, the Technical Assistance Training Center, with NRCS, and we are expanding those opportunities. So this is just a little bit of where we started. We started 20 plus years ago with boot camps. When I came on as a state conservationist, I said we really need to talk about the 9 steps of planning. We added that, and then every year we've evolved. And Yuri has really brought the wetlands and the soils to the forefront, as well as now having our own cultural resources archaeologist that has allowed us to train our local and state partners on that. Because when you're using federal funds, you have to be in adherence to the National Historic Preservation Act, okay? And when you're using federal funds, you have to be in adherence to NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. So, and when you're using federal funds, also the Endangered Species Act. So we've recently had discussions. One of the areas that I think I'd like to see us grow, and I think we have a fantastic wildlife biologist on staff now, and we have great partners like Pheasants Forever. I think we can, I'd like to bring some more grassland conversations. So this is training, and it continues to evolve, and it continues to really become more encompassing and broader. So a big shout out to these folks who do this as part of their lives. Big shout out to our partners who participate, and Doug and Jen who've agreed that it's a little daunting, and we're all coming together to help out. So I think we have a long ways to go to continue bringing on and teaching everybody to plan and to teaching them to fish rather than giving them a fish. So thanks, everybody. Susan, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. Are there questions? I would just add that, thanks for mentioning the ag preservation staff. We've had some requests, and, a lot of these trainings that you've talked about are those that are for people who are going to become conservation planners. We know we have a backlog, and when it comes to something like easements, it would be nice to have a specialized training for those, just for the awareness of the plan. And if they want to help to write a plan and have it reviewed by NRCS, that would decrease the workload if they feel like they're facing too much workload. So we have talked about expanding that and specializing and providing additional partner type trainings for those that may not be conservation planners, but want some knowledge of what NRCS does. So always evolving. Thank you both very much. Are there questions, Kami?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So I'll just make one plug before you really do give us the hook. Just talk about our training contributions, and the value that NRCS places on trainings. Yes, we do a lot of conservation planning, a lot of contracting, but we are committed to training staff and partners. So, over the last 18 months, you can see we've provided 40 trainings, and it really encompasses everything that we've talked about. At this point, 81% of the trainers have come from NRCS, but our partners make up 56% of the audience. So we are really committed to providing our training to our partners as well as NRCS. And I just want to throw a plug to out for Denise to say that, you know, at the national leadership meeting the other week in Philadelphia, she was actually called out as one of the states that leads in training. So other states are looking at what we're doing. So, you know, it just shows that we're really proud about the training that we provide and make available to folks.
Very good. Awesome.
Now you can give us the hook.
I'll give you a claps. I got you right here, buddy.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much.
And Yuri, for on the spot.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, Yuri.
There are weeks at a time where I'll see Yuri's car, but I won't see Yuri because she's out at training, so. Okay. Tim Peters again. My next topic, just an engineering update, what's going on with engineering this past quarter. And two things I want to hit. First off, standards. So Ted Evans was kind enough to send out several standards that are out for comment from the public right now. So if you have comment on those standards, I'm going to go through a couple of them here to highlight a few things. But the way that this works is standards are done at a national level. There's opportunity for the public to comment on national standards. Once our national discipline leads finalize those standards and the comments, then they send them to the states, and the states have the opportunity to make certain changes to the standards to make them more state specific. We can't change certain sections. We can't change the purposes, we can't change the names, but we can make the criteria more restrictive, and we can make changes to the consideration sections of the standards. And then I also want to just highlight quickly a couple of design guide tools that we're trying to work on. Good, Susan? Okay. So the first standard that you're going to see in the email from Ted is the animal mortality facility. It does have some new criteria. So if you're looking at this and you want to see something that's been added, there are new sections on pre-processing and mortality. There's a section on forced air composting now, and then there's a section on alkaline hydrolysis and dehydration for animal mortality. So those were changes made at the national level. There were some other minor changes, and this is a recurring theme with our standards, is that they like to reword them and make them more clear and more readable. And so that this standard is no different, and did go through some of those wording changes as well. Sometimes sections get moved around, and but the message often stays the same. The next standard that's out is anaerobic digester, and they added a section in digester for accounting for the effects on nutrients for digestate and the manure that's gone through those digesters. There's also new wording on gas control and utilization, and then some other minor changes to improve the wording for the standard as well. Roofs and covers, they added a new section on flexible geomembrane cover materials, and they have updated the thickness requirements. So those thicknesses did increase a little bit. There were no changes, though, to the HDPE material, which is typically what we see used in Pennsylvania. So no big impact to Pennsylvania producers, in my opinion, but you will notice that some of those thicknesses have increased for some materials like PVC and some others. And then once again, they improved the clarity. And then lined waterway or conveyance channel. So this standard is out as well, and you will notice a name change. So it used to be lined waterway or outlet, and now they changed that to conveyance channel instead of outlet. So the name change is a big deal. They added criteria to evaluate aquatic organism passage if we're using this standard, and they added new wording for thermal movement in concrete linings. Not something that we're seeing done in Pennsylvania, at least that I've seen done very often, if at all, but we could, and if we do, we need to think about the new section here. And then there are some new consideration sections for climate and downstream water sources. Other standards that are coming out that you'll see, and they'll have wording changes, but not a lot of content changes, are these: irrigation water, tailwater recovery, obstruction removal, sinkhole treatment. A change there is the name. It used to be karst sinkhole treatment, but now it's just sinkhole treatment to open that standard up to be applicable in more locations. We have the watering trough sent out, drainage water management, terrace, subsurface drain, main lateral, underground outlet, which I don't think changed at all, and then water and sediment control basin. So you will see all of these standards. We gave, I think, about a month for comments to come back to me. I really do appreciate comments. If there are ways that we can make these better for Pennsylvania and a little bit more technically strong, that would be terrific. Once again, I can't make them less restrictive. That's not usually something that's on the table, but we can make them more restrictive, and we can add sections that would be PA specific. Two other standards that are coming soon. I don't have them ready, didn't have them ready to send out with Ted's email today. We're still working through them at the state level because they do have some things we want to get right before we send it out and make sure that we have it the way we want it in Pennsylvania first. But waste storage facility, that's a big one for us. You know, that's a huge one for us on the engineering side. And we're working through a couple things, and that should come out hopefully within the month. And then
It's been on the desk for 4 or 5 years, hasn't it, Tim? I mean, Pete was providing comments. It's been in the national
Yeah.
flux for a number of years.
yeah, there's multiple things going on. We're wrestling with some national wording and policy, but then the standard itself too, which references policy, and that was yes, there's been a lot of work that have gone into 313, and we're going to have a good standard at the end of the day. And then 521, pond sealing or lining, geomembrane or geosynthetic clay liner. So another, maybe not used quite as frequently as 313, but a big one for us for any HDPE line storage. And we're trying to get some wording right and working through what we want at the state level, the standard to say. So that will be coming out within the next month, hopefully as well. So two standards that are coming. And then wanted to mention, we are looking to develop a couple new engineering tools that we intend to post on PHOTOG, the Field Office Tech Guide, Section 1 under the Conservation Engineering folder. It's going to take some time, and we'll get these out to the State Tunnel Committee at some point too, but we're working on finalizing a couple of design tools. If anybody's used our stream crossing tool, where it's kind of a one-stop shop where you can put a lot of information in and then the tool spits out a package for you. You need to add some things to it, but it gives a lot of the information there. We're trying to do the same thing with a couple other practices. So water system design package, this is geared towards like a one trough type water system where it's very simple. There's not a lot of calculations needed. There's some, and the tool will help step you through that. We're also looking at animal walkway and access road as other design tools, and these would be templates that could be used and would spit out a lot of information that would go into a package. So really trying to expedite and make a design work easier for staff that are using these tools. Yeah.
I know it's coming in the future, but
Yeah.
any urban or indoor farming type technology that we're looking at in engineering that you can speak about today?
So nationally, they are working on a chapter, a section to the National Engineering Manual that would be geared towards urban farming, small scale farming. That chapter is, I'm expecting to really be a very comprehensive look at practices that would go into urban farming. We don't have that out yet. That's not finalized, and where it's even going to fit within the National Engineering Manual is kind of evolved a little bit. So that would be coming. That's not really a tool per se, but that is coming. I know National has also talked about a small scale irrigation design course that they're looking to offer. So that's something like in our previous presentation talking about the national trainings that are coming. So there could be a small scale irrigation training that would be geared towards, small scale, and sometimes water sources are a big issue there. Where's the water coming from and how to use that? There could be other trainings from National on hydroponics and aquaponics, but we don't currently really have a practice that those fit under. So that's an evolving topic as well. From the state level, walkway maybe is probably not too much, but just trying to think if that's applicable. It may or may not be, depending on what.
It's come up with some high tunnel walkway
Sure.
requirements within municipal and city areas.
Sure.
Come up, but
And we can talk offline if there's ways to make that more applicable to small scale urban sites, if there's things we can add to it. So when it comes out for review, definitely together on that, Susan, if there's
Okay.
ways we can make it more useful.
thank you.
I think that's all I have.
Any questions from the audience,
Yeah.
Kami?
All I have. Thanks. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. And next is Dan talking about.
a question from Dimka.
Okay. Go ahead, Dimka.
Hey, it wasn't necessarily a question, but a suggestion. Pittsburgh and Philly, the small growers or the small micro farm growers have been using hydroponics and aquaponics for a couple of decades. They follow the grower producer training from the Produce Safety Alliance as far as water testing. So when you get an idea of what you're going to do as far as that with with urban agriculture, I would definitely check out some of the small growers in Pittsburgh that are attached to Farm Services or NRCS or their partners, and get some of the metrics and or data or experience from them. If you want to kind of see stuff that's pretty much, by the book for the grower producer stuff, but as far as like water testing and soil testing and whatnot, using those systems, but also just to get a farmer centered experience using those systems versus, just a strictly technical sense. Just the suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And those topics are being headed by the national office. The engineer that's involved in that has a good relationship with Harrisburg University. So he has been involved with Pennsylvania and looking at their facilities there. And then he has an interest in seeing Pennsylvania producers as well down the road. But that's pretty preliminary and not quite ready there. So thanks.
Thank you, Demka.
Okay, good afternoon again, Dan Ludwig. I'll give you some updates from the Ecological Sciences division here. So I'm proud to say that we are now finally fully staffed. For those of you that have been around for a while, yeah, we've been kind of working on not truly a skeleton crew, but a reduced crew. But we're finally back in full strength. So as of May 19th, 2024. So again, myself as the SRC, and then Mark Goodson is still and will be here for our state agronomist. Deanna Barnes is our resource conservationist, heading up our organic and conservation planning side of the house for us. Last March, we hired Brian Campbell as our state grazing specialist. And then, as Denise mentioned, we hired an awesome new wildlife biologist, Beth Sassaman. She came on board in late March, from her SDC position in Coachville. I'm glad to have Beth here, brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to the position. And then our last hire as of May 19th was Chris Peters. He's our new state forester, replacing Peter Hoagland. Chris has a background in forestry, did a lot of work in Virginia with Golden Wing Warbler and also forestry planning. So he's a great addition to our team and really jumping in and taking off with where we've left off with things. So again, just want to give you an update of where we are with staffing. Seems like we're talking about practice standards. We did release 2 draft state standards. Ted should have mailed them out yesterday. I think he did because we already got a comment really quick. So those 2 practices that are out for 30-day review as of today are 612 or tree or shrub establishment. Again, like Tim mentioned, most of these standards had some rewarding to improve readability. The biggest thing that you'll see in 612, if you're looking for it, is the purpose section was revised to align with our agency identified resource concerns and some additional criteria. So you will see provide livestock shelter, which we're going to take a look at, and then develop renewable energy systems. So please take a look at that. And then the other one, practice is 655, our forest trails and landings. No big changes on that, just some minor rewarding to improve readability on that. Both of these are forestry discipline practices. So if you do have comments, please send those to Chris Peters and he will log those. And then once the 30-day period's up, we'll review comments and work on releasing those new standards in October. Interim practice standards. I've talked a little bit at previous meetings about Pennsylvania adopting interim practice standards. So these are new ideas that states have proposed to treat resource concerns, where our existing conservation practices might not just do it the way we need it to. So we've adopted interims in the past. We had 810, which is annual forages and grazing systems. We adopted low tunnels, high tunnels, and our organic management 2 years ago. And this year we're looking at the potential of adopting 4. 805 is amending soil properties with lime. So that's basically what it means. But then there is some interest from using stuff like enhanced rock weathering products to adjust pH in soils. And what that product is showing is when that breaks down to adjust the pH in the soil, it doesn't release the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases. So there's a lot of interest in that. And Mark Goodson has been looking at that to see if that's something that we may want to look at, because I did learn that apparently in Pennsylvania, we have the largest basalt mine that's used to produce the gravel that goes on asphalt shingles. So they're looking at a way to get rid of that byproduct from the shingle plant. So just a keynote there. 822, this is a mouthful. Non-ruminant livestock outdoor management of vegetative cover. You say, what the heck does that mean?
She's crazy.
So this is meant for non-ruminants. Our 528 is being revised. They're still working on it nationally, but that's really geared towards grazing management on ruminants. 822, think of grazing chickens, poultry. I won't say the S word. But the other place where I think it really has promise here in Pennsylvania is with horses. You know, horses, if they are rotationally grazing horses, then that fits under 528. But the term I like to use is if we have rotational horses, so we're putting different groups out on the same lot. 822 is a practice that is what I think where we're going to see the most use of it here in Pennsylvania. 827, strategic harvested forage management. Love the names that some of these states come up with, but essentially this is looking at bale grazing. So in grazing systems, there's a lot of popularity in farmers producing baleage or round bales. And this basically is strategically placing them out in the field. So during the grazing season or to extend the grazing season, they still have pasture, but yet they graze, they put their fences up so you can graze around those bales. A good nutrient management strategy there. And then 828, wildlife habitat site preparation. This is really looking at prepping sites for herbaceous establishment. So our pollinator plantings, warm season grass plantings that really doesn't fall under 315, which is meant for individual plant treatment. And that 320 or the 828 may give us that broad base way to prep for plantings. And then I'll close out with where we're at with training. And Tim and I's previous presentation, we talked about what we've done, what we've got coming up. So I already went over our May session of Intro to Planning, but our Conservation Planning Part 2 Certified Planner Training is coming up September 16th through the 20th in State College. It's going to be a full house. We've got, this year is the first year in many where we are actually looking at, having to close the doors, but good to see it though. A lot of partners are in this training this year. So, and then we also have our second session of Intro to Planning, which will be held in Lebanon, November 19th through the 21st. And with that, those are the updates from Ecosciences. Go ahead.
These interim practice standards, are those existing, are those new national
These
practices?
Yes, so they've been proposed by a state, and then each state has the option to adopt them if they see them fit. So the way an interim practice works is if Pennsylvania will adopt those, and it's basically a 3-year trial period. So we adopt it, we see how it works, and then each year we have to provide a written report to the national office showing how it works, how it's been working, how we've used it, and then at the end of the 3rd year, then we make a recommendation whether or not it should be converted into a permanent practice, be merged with an existing practice, or it be scrapped altogether. So the most recent practice that's going from an interim to permanent standard is 336 soil carbon amendment. That came out as 808 soil carbon. I don't think it was amendment, but that was one that has recently gone from an interim to a permanent standard.
So the interim practices, they're not going to be available in every state for 2025.
No, it's up to
States
each,
adopt them.
right, it's up to each state to decide whether or not they want to adopt it. And, most of these practices do have, financial assistance payments tied to them, so.
Are we doing them in PA?
We are looking at it, so.
And that actually applies to regular standards too. Not every state has to adopt regular standards. It's up to each state if they want to adopt it or not. Think on leadership decisions.
That leads me to another question. I was asked recently by someone not familiar, how many conservation practice standards do we have on the field office technical guide? Does anyone?
Are there
No,
270 some total nationally?
No, that was a quiz question at a training I was at. How many practice standards? I want to say there's 80 some national, or is it more than that?
More than that.
I don't know.
Oh,
I'll find the list and I can
Will
put
you?
it, I'll put it in the chat. How many
how many?
how many
Okay.
national practice standards are?
No, not national, in the state.
Oh, how many we've
This was
adopted in the
somebody in
state?
Pennsylvania that was unfamiliar that asked.
Well, I'll put that in I'll count it up and I'll put it in the chat, but maybe
Cool.
it's 80 in Pennsylvania, but
Thank you.
I'll get you that number.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Questions online? Okay, Yuri?
So he had a, is there a pointer or?
Yes,
or-
there is.
Yes, on the.
Oh,
It's on the podium. Mhm.
oh, wow, okay.
You're welcome to drive.
Does it just this,
Mhm.
okay, all right. So I'm aware that we are running a little behind, so I can.
It's okay.
It's okay, all right. So I wanted to give a soils update on some of the technical soil services that we've recently started doing, so particularly towards the end of 2023 and gearing up full speed ahead in 2024. So this is our use of a PXRF. All right, so that stands for portable X-ray fluorescence. And you can see it looks like a space age ray gun. That's like, here's the handle, there's a trigger. It's mounted on a stand right now, so you don't get the full effect of holding it and pointing it at things. But it gives a screen that has an instant digital readout of about 30 some elements in the soil, many heavy metal contaminants, and it gives you total elemental amounts of those in real time. And here's our resource soil scientist, Kafeni Kajela, operating one in the field. So I won't read it all that, but it's basically you zap X-rays at the soil and elements will reflect back an electromagnetic spectrum that the device is able to read and identify then what elements are in the soil. So we can set it up in the office. This is like a lead line box and measure soils that people send them, like our field, Kafeni will send them to me in a plastic bag, air dried, and we can measure them that way, or we can just take direct measurements in the field. And of course, when you take measurements in the field, it's not laboratory grade. You're dealing with whatever soil moisture content you have. You might have some rocks and gravel. It's not like in a lab where it's dried and sieved. So it's a site assessment. It's not an actual super accurate measurement but it gives them a very good idea of a resource concern if there's heavy metal contaminants in the soil. And then it's the option of the landowner or the urban farmer to then send it to a certified lab for further identification. So just these are, urban soils have resource concerns, and the typical ones are high soil temperatures, compaction, low organic matter, limited water supply, heat stress to plant roots, less microbial activity, runoff, but then contamination, because urban soils, of course, have urban industries on them. And so these are the sources of heavy metals in urban soils. They come from all different places. Some of the geology itself can have heavy metals. You might have copper, mercury, lead, and zinc that was atmospheric that has since been deposited in these soils. Or you have actually factories, steel making, brass manufacturing, battery production that took place. And use of pressure-treated lumber can give you chromium or arsenic, some of that old pressure-treated lumber. And lead is especially evident near roadways because of automobile emissions and our use of leaded gasoline historically. Okay, so what did we do? I'm also looking at my notes here. All right, so starting in fall of 2023 up through now, we visited 17 sites in Philadelphia, Delaware County, Dauphin, Lancaster, and Berks County so far. These are all southeastern counties where we have urban focus areas. So the kinds of sites we've been on are urban yards, like somebody's backyard where they're wanting to grow food for themselves and their neighbors, community gardens, churchyards, parks, playgrounds, vacant lots that used to have houses or buildings. We've even done some school athletic fields where they're converting them to community gardens now. So these are examples of some of the sites. So you can see these are like urban vacant lots. This is a big Life Do Grow, an amazing community garden in Philadelphia. This was, I think, Eastmont Park. It's actually a park with a playground in Harrisburg where they want to develop a community garden there. This is a place called The Bridge. It's at the old Bishop McDevitt High School here in Harrisburg, where they've converted this whole area to a community garden. It's amazing. And then this is somebody's backyard in Philadelphia. All right, so what have we found? That's here. All right, so in nearly all urban sites, lead is elevated, particularly with respect to natural soil background levels. So in Pennsylvania, the average background soil lead level in a natural soil is about 24 parts per million. And when I averaged across all the measurements we've taken in all those 17 sites, they ranged from 6 parts per million lead to 2,909 parts per million lead. And the average across all sites was 277 parts per million lead. So what does that mean? How much lead is too much? So amazingly enough, there's no standards set by EPA or DEP for urban gardening and safe lead levels. So what we use is standards set by PA/DEP for brownfield remediation for residential areas. So they take an old industrial brownfield site and then they want to make it into a residential area. They do have a bunch of standards for that site has to meet for levels of all different kinds of toxins. So for them in PA, that level is 500 parts per million. To compare New Jersey DEP, that's really small, I'm sorry, but the standard is 400 parts per million. And the EPA, as of 2024, they updated, they used to be 400 parts per million soil lead level for a Superfund site, and now it's down to 200 parts per million lead. And so what we do is with each report, we provide this table here on the right that the University of Connecticut has a really good soil lead interpretation fact sheet that we include with all of our reports. And what University of Connecticut says is that 100 parts per million or less, you're good. You don't have to worry. That's mostly, falls within the era of average lead levels. Once you get over 100, though, that's definitely elevated. You need to use best management practices. They even suggest that if you have children under 6, that they should get their lead levels tested regularly. And that is why we are worried about lead, because it's everywhere. It doesn't go away. It doesn't decay away in the soil. It accumulates in our bodies. And particularly for young children, it can be very bad for developmental issues and all kinds of things. And then once you get to 300 or 400 parts per million, you should really think about don't grow leafy vegetables or roof crops, grow maybe your fruits, your tomatoes, that sort of thing. And when you get over 400 parts per million, you shouldn't be growing vegetables at all in those soils. There's more literature that probably orchards are okay at certain levels, but it's even there, the literature that is not 100% one way or the other. Okay, our continuation of our findings, the higher the disturbance in the area, for example, the vacant lots where they used to have houses, and especially where urban artifacts were found, had elevated lead levels. School athletic fields and things that have been public parks for a long time were okay. Those tended to be okay. Even in elevated areas like in the middle city, like that Life Do Grow site, it was one of the sites I showed, they had added so much compost and good stuff over the years that when we measured what was actually where they were actually growing, the lead levels were very good. If we zapped it like in the walkway that hadn't been amendment, they were high. And then observations that were made closest to buildings and streets particularly had higher lead levels. And arsenic and chromium were also somewhat elevated in many of these areas as well. So this is what our customers get. They get a report, they get a map. This shows every single observation point we took in the surface and the subsurface, and it's color coded for lead. Red is bad, green is good, yellow and orange are sort of in between. And then they also get a table that has the 8 most ubiquitous, typically found metal contaminants in urban soils according to EPA. So we give them vanadium, chromium, nickel, copper, zinc, arsenic, cadmium, and lead. And where it says less than limit of detection, that means it was so low that the thing didn't pick it up. And so most of these, except for arsenic, chromium, and lead, are usually well below the state health standards. And then we give them what the state health standards are for Pennsylvania, for New Jersey, and what the mean natural average of those elements are in PA soil. So they have a lot of data to compare it to. So this is just an example of where this helped. So this was a place in Delaware County. I blocked out the address just to protect that person's privacy. But this was the first site we did. This was like our pilot project. We made a map, and you can see there's the surface, there was green, but there was also yellow, some red, but subsurface, there was much more yellow, much more red. So we said, okay, elevated lead levels. And she was already growing some in the ground. This is what it looked like when we went to the site. She was already growing some things in the ground. And then after the local field office worked with her, they installed all these raised beds. So now she can grow a ton of food now in this yard. So we work as a team with our urban farmers and with our local field offices. And this was at Haver Farm, and that person was with the Bethel AME Church. Princess, yep. And so I just want to reiterate, we don't just go out and do it for anybody. This is part of our planning process. Dan went over it. He said we have 9 steps of conservation planning. For some reason, I cut off. I only put 8. Sorry about that, Dan. So work, if you're in our urban area, we're focusing on urban areas. Work with your local NRCS office, go through the steps of planning. I think this is like step 3, maybe, of inventorying resources. And then we can work with you from there. So any questions?
But just, thank you, Yuri. So we get a lot of questions. Why are you out in these areas? And, they're taxpayers too. And so many of them are growing foods for their communities. They're doing a lot more than just growing foods there for their communities. They're also growing kids. They're showing them what to do out there. We all have in rural areas have kids in 4-H or in FFA or other things. So this is an opportunity for us to expand there and, build communities that way. The other thing that, just as we talk about this, we have had focus on Philadelphia, but in reality, we've been in Pittsburgh as well for a long time. And I just was asked to get some data from Pittsburgh. And we have over 169 producers in Allegheny County that we've worked with in the past 2 farm bills. So they're providing technical soil services like this before us as well. The district Allegheny County Conservation District is also doing this kind of work in addition to us, but also just planning, contract work, and urban conservation practices. So big shout out, folks been doing this for a while. It's kind of gathered attention, I think, now, and it's become more popular and more, I would say the movement's just been continuing to grow. So we're just on the cusp of this, and this will be something as well that will be evolving. So with that, I'll turn it over
Good segue.
Susan, because it's the segue to partnership.
Yes, thank you, Yuri. And I'm going to yield most of my time. I want Dimka Braswell, our chair of our urban subcommittee, is going to do a little report from Philadelphia. And we also have Kristen Hand, I believe, is still online, and is going to present the designation for the Kittatinny Ridge that just happened. So both Melissa and I have real short updates, and we'll do those and get right into what Dimka wants to present today. So for partnership and outreach, I just wanted to give a real quick shout out to the Urban Service Center in Philadelphia. They're treading new ground, and I think we see the benefit already to having our staff there. Both FSA and NRCS have worked together and reached over 100 growers with technical assistance. The big barrier in working on eligibility has been the sticky point where, land access and certain things that are barriers there. And I think, Dimka, you're going to talk a little bit about that, might be overcome in the future years or future months. So we're working hard to service new customers in Philadelphia and going into Pittsburgh as well. But collaboration with PA Department of Agriculture and State Conservation Commission and local contacts in Philadelphia, it looks like there is support from City Council and others to hopefully open a conservation district office in Philadelphia. So that's happening and hopefully soon in the future. We're also, we got approval to talk about the Urban Service Center that will be opening in Pittsburgh. We will have staff hired there, and we'll be coordinating very closely with FSA, and Allegheny County Conservation District is the main partner there. We're working with on servicing folks in Pittsburgh. And as you said, Dimka, folks have been doing this for years, but they're new customers to us, and we'll learn from our customers in this case. So we also have, and I'm excited to say that we have hired a state outreach coordinator. It's been about 1.5 years. We haven't had someone. It's a new position for us, and it will be coordinating both external and internal outreach. Abigail Appleman, some of you might know her. She was with us before as a partner employee, but she is being hired on as a federal employee that will be our state outreach coordinator. She'll begin August 26th, and she'll be based in the center part of the state at Mill Hall, but she'll be here in Harrisburg, and she has statewide responsibilities. She'll also be looking at analyzing both staff and customer data for diversity and equity. It's become very important for our agency, and so we'll be looking at that and looking at parity and how we serve both in terms of who we hire and how we serve our customers. So that's going to be a big effort this next year. And I'm going to do my own if I can. Next page, please. I need to use my.
It's the down button.
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah, no, that didn't work for me. Okay, let's see. I'll just use my scroll. Okay, so another just quick update. It looks like the first one didn't come in, but we're, I don't know what that, we came up with an outreach and equity and communication plan this year. For the first time, we've combined all the different plans that we do. We had some priorities from the chief. We had civil rights priorities. Title VI is our customers. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, I believe, is internal. So both internal and external, we've combined that all into an outreach, equity, and communication plan, looking at how we recruit and retain employees, how we log our performance, and how we report using, I don't know if folks don't know outside the agency, but we use a Survey 123 tool and a dashboard that we've been doing since 2020 to really look at how our field offices, everyone in our agency does outreach. So we're looking to get to give our employees credit around the state for doing outreach, and that's something we keep track of in our dashboard. So that's something that we've added in our new outreach, equity, and communication plan. And the last thing I'll talk about is just statewide partnership updates. We do have a grant out to PASA, Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Ag, which is a climate smart grant. They're working to identify indigenous and historically underserved farmers and provide technical assistance on climate smart practices through that agreement. And then we work very closely with the Pennsylvania Veteran Farming Project. They have what's called a 2501 grant, where they received a grant, national grant to do beginning farmer training and mentoring. They've been very effective at that. They do a conference every year in Pennsylvania. And we've just signed an agreement with the Korean American Farmers Association to really identify communities around the state where we can do some cultural training. We can do some outreach to Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. So we'll be looking at identifying areas of the state where we have pockets of communities that we can work with. We also have technical agreements statewide that we work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have a longstanding relationship with them for our easement program on bog turtles and other threatened turtle species. We just added the spotted and wood turtles in those agreements. That's a new 5-year agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to support our work with that. We're also looking at we're signing into an agreement to help streamline our stewardship technical assistance for the wetland restoration easement program. So that's one. And I just talked yesterday, and we have Diana here from Fish and Boat Commission, VPA HIP, I forget what it stands for, Voluntary Public Access, HIP. What is HIP? Quick. Anybody? I don't know what it is. Yeah. But fishing access easements, they've done, they're up to about 8 different places around the state that they've gained access for public fishing around the state. And so that's something Fish and Boat Commission, we're looking at another 5-year agreement with them for that. And I have
incentive.
What's that?
Yeah,
Habitat incentive.
yeah.
Thank you very much. And that is my update. And I'm going to turn it over to Dimka and bring up your presentation. Are you still on, Dimka?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'm showing your report.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to keep it extremely brief because some of the stuff I'm gonna say is on the news. Dimka Braswell. I am the appointed member and facilitation cohort for Philadelphia Food Advisory Council, which is a smaller branch of the Pennsylvania, I believe, food advisory networks that we have. We are in partnership with Farm Services and NRCS, basically to develop agriculture and environmental policy for Philadelphia because we just don't have it. Our next public meeting is August 25th from 2 to 4. Considering how, a lot of what we do is kind of copied and paste for other groups, be it Atlanta, New York, we're actually interviewing with other folks around the country as well as as well as state about the conservation district planning and just the community support for urban agriculture and environmental products that centers state and federal directives that y'all all do as a job. We're getting a lot of traction and a lot of farmer and grower support. So I just want to once again thank you for allowing us to work in partnership to even develop this, not just for Philadelphia, but Pittsburgh also. That is community centered. I would always suggest just signing on to the newsletter. We're very transparent, even though we are a council, we do center anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and just pro-worker policies and quality of life that go hand in hand with a lot of state and federal directives from the Farm Bill, EPA, and just pretty much everything else. Like I said, we just don't have any policy or anything for these things here in Philly. I wanted to, and also I want to shout out Ted Evans for helping me get this design because I was on the farm when this was done. And I really wanted to make sure that y'all had just the website information so you can read this stuff at your leisure. About how we operate and what we do. And like I said, we're very transparent. So there's recordings and notes going back from, I think, maybe 2014 or 15, just to show you how how community outreach with some city assistance helps for those barriers that Susan was talking about, like land access. We deal specifically with issues like that, hunger, zero waste, and a lot of climate smart technologies. You could scroll down or next slide. One of the events that happened was a law that just came about, adverse possession. It used to be 20 years, now it's 10. That will help a lot of gardeners, small growers, and environmentalists here in Philadelphia, especially with that terrible report about soil in urban areas, which is something that we are leaning very heavy in with NRCS and other partners to try to educate not just the growers and environmentalists, but also the community at large about specific quality of life issues that can be mediated or remediated through agriculture or environmental products. Wanted to make sure y'all wanted to read up on that. That is a win for us. You can scroll down or next slide.
Thank you.
Sure. And the chief came to Philly, which was great for all of us. It was I believe it was the NRCS National Leadership meeting. And myself, Kim Porter, Dr. Jamie Green, and I'm blanking on the Reverend's name. I'm so sorry. Susan, do you remember her name?
Carolyn Cavaness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who is also a member of the state committee also was there, and just fielding questions, and especially specific barrier concerns like land access and political shenanigans, I guess would be the polite way to say it. When you have local government that does not adhere to state or federal directives or anything about environmental or sustainability. Just him and y'all there that day gave a lot of help to the community as far as wanting us to push our agenda forward to have Philadelphia County not just a conservation district, but also matching state and federal directives for agriculture and environmental products. So, yep.
Yeah.
And yep, the equity forum was the 18th, and it was great. It was Secretary Redding was there, Valsec was also there. Dr. Jamie Green hosted the circular economy incentive for urban agriculture. The problem that we have, like I said, is our local politicians just don't understand and don't care. She, with others, have developed a circular economy idea that a lot of us urban producers and growers are leaning into because it helps sustain our communities, economically and food wise, but it also gives us an opportunity to get into the regional market with PASA and NRCS's assistance and partnership. So in keeping with the Farm Bill and a lot of the work that y'all do, we're hoping that this kind of incentive will help not only urban communities, but suburban and rural communities wanting to use agriculture and environmental products to network and just rebuild their communities. And I think the last one, because I always come with great news, and then I always, one more great news. Oh yeah, this was a picture, and thank you for the cool picture.
I added that in there.
Thank you so much. But basically this was just the presentation. Yeah, so the bad news, I always come with good news, but then I always come with bad news. Land access, that is a hard barrier here and in other places like Pittsburgh. This is a screenshot from the Philadelphia Revenue Department. This was the only alert that all of us in Gardens who are using public land received when the sheriff's cells were reactivated after 3 years. Our Food Advisory Council with other partners within the city were able to get a moratorium I'm mispronouncing it, I'm sorry. But we were able to get the sheriff's cell stopped for 3 years while we were trying to, draft the urban agriculture plan and what have you. Our new politicians decided to restart the sale and immediately lockout procedures started. And that is, I just wanted to show you how difficult it is for community members to develop policy that helps their community using agriculture products. Just to show you in real time how bad it is. But because of the partnerships that we all have with agriculture and the environment, we're hoping that the growers, now that they have access to the service office, can use the networks that we have to advocate for ourselves, to change or to adapt our local policy to state and federal guidelines and directives. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for me. And thank y'all again.
No, thank you, Demke. You've been an advocate there in Philly, and yeah, I think the visibility helps. It really has. So appreciate your involvement always. Next, we're going to go to.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And Kristen Hand, are you there? Would you like to go through? I don't know if you have your own PowerPoint or there's some slides up on the screen if you'd like to talk about the designation.
Hi, Susan. Yeah, yes, I am here and we can use the slides you put together. That's fine.
Okay.
I know I've talked to you guys before about the Sentinel landscape application, that process that we went through. It was a huge effort and tons of partners, and it was great to be able to work with everybody. And it's exciting to say that it is official. We have been designated the Kittatinny Ridge Sentinel landscape. Through the process, we did kind of have to truncate the area a little bit, just because it is such a big area, and it was a decision that we discussed with the coordinating committee. Maybe we'll truncate the area a little bit, and then eventually we can make the case to try and expand it. But for now, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it has some details on there. You can see this year they actually designated 5 different Sentinel landscapes, and we were one of them. And that's pretty impressive. In the past years, it's only been like 1 or 2 at a time. So this is exciting to see more and more Sentinel landscapes being developed. There's 18 total, and you can see, go ahead, go to the next slide. You can see here that basically Sentinel landscapes, they've been around since 2013. It's a beautiful concept and partnership between military installations and how we can use conservation practices to help military preparedness. Fort Indiantown Gap here in Pennsylvania is one of the busiest National Guard training centers. We have some very unique habitat on the land that they use for their training practices. And it's right there on the Kittatinny. So there's a lot of other features too, like dark skies on the north side of the ridge that make it important and elevated to try and be conserved. Go ahead, next slide. Yeah, so we had over 50 different partners. I would probably could put that closer to 100 when we started really getting everybody involved. So it's great to see all the partners come together with this designation. And right now, Fort Indiantown Gap is our anchor installation. I think it's a total of like 1.9 million acres of protection. And basically what this is it is a voluntary kind of designation. It just gives us the opportunity to get more funds out there to try and get easements or have projects done within this landscape. So it kind of heightens the importance of the landscape and gives us some more funding opportunities to try and do work within the landscape. But it's not something, we've had a lot of questions about people coming in and saying, hey, like, does this change, my rights on my land? And we are quick to say no. This in no way impedes people's rights on their land. It's just giving priority to and more access to funding within the boundary of this land. We have been getting some great feedback and some people reaching out saying, hey, like I heard about this in the news. How can I get an easement on my farm? Which is fantastic. We're really excited to see that even though we don't really have it up and running yet, people have been seeing it. The word has been getting out and they've been contacting us. Here's a picture of the night sky. And you can see where the Kittatinny landscape is outlined there in pink. And, there's a lot of light pollution on that south side of the ridge. But the darkness on the north side of the ridge there is clearly seen as well. So super important for Fort Indian Town Gap's night training. They do a lot of night training with their helicopters and planes. So it's really important that they have that unique quality there. And the ridge is kind of a natural barrier to help prevent some of that light pollution coming up from Harrisburg and the Great Valley. Next slide. A lot of what we're focusing, so you'll see here, this is a story map. Josh Von Brakel in the Department of Conservation Natural Resources worked with us. He put together this amazing story map, and it gives a lot of detail about what the landscape is, why it's important, what the goals are for the Sentinel landscape, and then all of more detailed information about the military preparedness and what the challenges are that we're facing within the landscape. Next slide. Oh, there's my contact information. I know we're trying to keep it brief, so just wanted to let you guys know if you have any questions about the Sentinel landscape. Right now, people are, yeah, I can try and get the I think she's going to post this presentation. So yes, you can get the light pollution map. It's a really cool map. And but we're in the process of trying to get up and running. I know Rose McCarthy at the governor's office and a few other people are attending the orientation program meetings that Sentinel Landscape does. So the first step is going to be trying to hire a coordinator to run this. And then the very next step is developing an implementation plan. So wish us luck with that because it's a lot of work, but we're really excited about it. Any other questions real quick?
No, I would just add that, and I did include in the packet, we'll post the Kittatinny Ridge RCPP. If people are asking about easements now, until the Sentinel Landscape Program is up and running, we do have funding for easements on the Kittatinny Ridge through the previously funded a couple of years ago, the RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. So if folks are interested, you're welcome to send them to us as far as that goes. And Melissa, we can take applications through the PA Department of Agriculture, who is the lead partner on that project.
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic. I will do that.
Thanks for your partnership.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
And we're going to move. Thank you again, Kristen. We appreciate it. We're going to move to an easement update. Let me just. You want to go through this, Melissa?
Sure. You want me to?
Yes, please. And you can advance slides unless you want me to.
Yeah, I might let you.
Okay.
We are in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2024, and we are kind of tallying things and wrapping things up and getting all our funds committed and all of our programs and easements as well. So I'm just going to go through a rapid summary of what we are tying up this year. So we have the ACEP ALE program. Those are our entity held
agricultural land easements. And this year we had 7 applications that we are wrapping up the process of committing our funds. So you see we had 4 parcels come in through the Land Conservancy of Adams County, 1 large parcel through Cumberland, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture with that local county preservation board, and 2 parcels through Schuylkill County, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture and their local county preservation board. Next, we had 3 WRE applications. This is exciting because we haven't really put contracts on these since 2020. So this year we were excited to have a good application in each of our areas, 1 in the southeast, Lebanon County, 1 in the northeast, Juniata County, and 1 in the western part of the state, Blair County. And we are moving on Kittatinny Ridge. As we discussed, there is a 5-year regional conservation partnership program for the Kittatinny Ridge that does preserve agricultural land and forest land easements. There is $7 million set aside through the USDA to partner in the purchase of these easements. On the next slide, you'll see that so far we have 16 parcel applications that have tied up about half of our funds available to partner in those easement purchases. 5 of those parcels have already closed in Cumberland County and Schuylkill County, and we had new applications come in this year. 5 of those in Lebanon County, which was exciting. And we'll just go to the next page. So we still are accepting applications in the Kittatinny Ridge area. The agricultural land easements, those applications are made through the local county ag preservation board. Currently, Cumberland, Schuylkill, and Lebanon County have been actively applying to protect parcels. And the forest mixed use easements are coming in through the local land trusts that are partners in this specific Kittatinny project. And those are Berks Nature, Central Pennsylvania Conservancy, Lebanon Valley Conservancy, and Monada Conservancy are taking applications for those. And Ward Burton Foundation is also facilitating easement acquisition and surrounding the Fort Indiantown Gap. If you are interested in learning more about easement applications, contact me, Melissa Hanner. And if you have questions about stewarding existing easements, you'll reach out to Mick Albert. And finally, as we're wrapping up everything on behalf of Mick and all of us, our annual monitoring is about at the closing. We are 98% complete in our monitoring activities for the year. And thank you very much to our state and partners that helped with the easement monitoring.
Bob would like to know, does the ridge continue to the Delaware River to the northeast?
It does go into the Delaware watershed. I do not know about that.
That may be a.
I might be able to check. The ridge
Maybe.
itself does go to the Delaware and up actually into New York. Within the state, the conservation landscape is the entire area from Maryland to Jersey.
It's just not part of either of the projects we've talked about today.
Correct. Yeah, those were, so the RCPP was kept to the Chesapeake watershed, and similarly, the Sentinel landscape was, kind of truncated a little bit as well, to maintain closer to the actual parameters in the program related to military preparedness.
Any other questions? Thanks, Bob, for the question. All right, thank you. Melissa. And we're gonna do, sorry, we're running over time, but this has been a great content for this meeting. Ashley is going to give some program updates, financial program updates, and that will be the last part of the agenda for today. So thanks, folks, for sticking in there.
Yes, hello again. I'm Ashley Lennig, and I
Oh,
think Susan's
great.
gonna bring up Ryan's slides
I
next.
did.
I'm just gonna give a quick update from Jared Shippey. That's our Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. He's not able to be here now
Just a
because
minute.
he has a 3 o'clock meeting.
Oh, there we go.
So here are his comments. He wanted to give a welcome to Jeanette Lesher. She is new on the programs team. She has over 15 years of experience as a district conservationist in the field, and she hit the ground running as soon as she came on board here. I guess it was over a week ago, by reviewing contracts for us on the program team. So we greatly appreciate that. Secondly, we're working to wrap up fiscal year 2024 contracting with a large increase in funding over fiscal year 2023, mainly due to the Inflation Reduction Act. So that was money geared toward climate smart practices and enhancements for CSP. Lastly, we're gearing up for fiscal year 2025 and starting to work with local offices and partners to strategize how to do that. So that's an update from Jared. Now I'll give an update for Ryan, who also has a conflict. So Ryan Cornelius is our Environmental Quality Incentives Program Manager, which is a relatively large job, especially when you keep getting more and more funds. So as you can see, the EQIP Inflation Reduction Act, we're allocated over $31.9 million. We're at 96.4% of our funds obligated. And then for Act Now, EQIP IRA cover crop, to date, 384 contracts have been obligated for over 31 million on over 156,000 acres. Then, of course, we have the general Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and we were allocated over 24 million for that, plus an additional 5.5 million to target historically underserved applicants. And to date, 290 contracts were obligated in that funding pool, totaling over 21 million on over 29,000 acres. I was afraid I'm going to stumble over the numbers. Act Now, EQIP, NWQI, so that's the National Water Quality Initiative. We have 19 applications, and to date, 14 contracts have been obligated. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my report. AMA, Agricultural Management Assistance Program, we're allocated 200,000, and to date, 6 contracts have been obligated, totaling $178,945 on 62 acres. Similarly, with AMA, RMA, we're allocated $196,432, and to date, 9 of those were obligated on 17 acres. So I think that was all he had for his update, correct?
Yep, that's it.
Okay,
Now we're
you
going
should have
to
yours.
There you go.
You're so good at this.
Yeah.
Moving these along. Thank you. So I already spoke to you earlier. I'm Ashley Lennig. Those are the programs I'm going to talk about. Conservation Innovation Grants, very briefly, Conservation Stewardship Program, and the National Water Quality Initiative. And thank you for moving the slides. As I mentioned, our state competition is out right now. We put it out, or the grants folks put it out on May 31st. It's open through July 31st. Applications need to be received by 11:59 p.m. That notice of funding opportunity or announcement of it was shared on June 3rd with this group. Ted Evans would have sent that out. And it was recently announced that the national CIG awards were made for $90 million across the nation. So that came out as an announcement on July 19th. Next, we have Conservation Stewardship Program. As you can see here, we're busy working towards obligating our funds and our contracts for good enhancement and continued conservation on the land. So we had 304 contracts so far this fiscal year for over 9.8 million on over 56,000 acres. So that puts us at 83% of our funds obligated as of Monday when I pull this report, with the current contracts that are approved and not yet have the money attached will be at 86%. Last week I selected an additional 12. And then you can see there what our total CSP allocation was across renewals and classic for fiscal year 2024, over 11.9 million. And then I have our CSP Classic allocation at the bottom. So we're working on Classic now, but in terms of the chief wanting to have 80% of the funding tied up into contracts at this point in the year, I wanted to show those full amounts. And lastly, I wanted to mention the National Water Quality Initiative. Our fiscal year 2024 allocation was over 3.1 million. We had those 19 applications that we selected. 14 of those were obligated for over 2.3 million on over 2,000 acres. And since we had some dropouts on some of those applications, no additional funds were needed this year. In the past, I usually ask for more. We did submit some potential National Water Quality Initiative changes for the withdrawal of the watershed or the planning phase. So we'd like to move out of the Upper Yellow and Beaver Creek, but we've been in there since 2017. And we would like to request to add Fishing Creek in Clinton County. So those requests are currently with National Office for review. They're just beginning their review of those. I don't have anything else on these other two slides unless there are questions.
Questions or
Thank you.
comments?
Bob has a question. Will FY 2025 programs be funded through the 2018 FB, assuming we won't have a new FB for 2025?
As far as I know, that would be the case is if we keep continuing, we might see adjustments to payment limitations and things. Otherwise, we're always functioning under the last farm bill.
Okay, thank you.
And then Dan Ludwig has an update.
How many?
The NRCS has 128 permanent conservation practice standards and 6 interim conservation practice standards, unless he miscounted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good answer. I knew there was over 100 anyway. Okay. Last but certainly not least is Adam Dellinger. Are you on, Adam?
Yes, Susan, good afternoon.
You might want to turn your volume. Can you turn your volume up for us? Can you turn your volume up just a tad for us?
I will. I've been having issues ever since my computer update.
Oh.
I'll shout.
Yeah, do that.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'll just give a real quick update for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Susan, if you could just go to the next slide, please. We'll just keep this moving. Just an update on contracts for this year of obligation of financial assistance. So we are looking to obligate 50 land management contracts this year across a variety of RCPP projects. So these are contracts that are sort of act like an EQIP contract, typically installing best management practices and other conservation practices on lands. So we're looking to obligate a little over $11 million in RCPP FA this year, just on the land management side. So I think this is the biggest year yet for RCPP financial assistance. When I created these slides last week, we had obligated a little over $4 million. Together, looking at contracts that were obligated and approved, it was about $10 million. Actually, where we are at today is about that $10 million mark. So we're, 86, 87% on the obligated and approved. So moving right along on that. Kind of exciting news. It looks like, we're going to wrap up all the financial assistance funding on 5 projects this year. Buffalo Creek in Western Pennsylvania, Lancaster's Common Agenda for Clean Water in Lancaster County, Turkey Hill in Central PA, delisting ag impaired streams with Chesapeake Conservancy in Central PA, and actually a new project for this year, the Farmland Preservation and Climate Change Mitigation Project. So big year for contracts, which is very exciting. Next slide, please. But do not fear, there is more money coming. We have some new projects that were just selected last year, and we've negotiated new agreements with new partners. And just a little bit of detail about these. The Nature Conservancy is the lead partner on a new alternative funding arrangement project. That means the Nature Conservancy will be doing the primary work for promoting the project and holding the contracts with the landowners. And this is a precision ag technology project, working with remote sense data and coming up with precision fertilizer recommendations for cash crops. This is a multi-state project and throughout PA, Maryland, and Delaware. So if anyone might be interested in that, we can look to the Nature Conservancy for more information. The other new project that we expect to have contracts under in 25 is with the Maryland and Virginia Milk Producers Co-op Association. So this is called the Mid-Atlantic Dairy Farmers Producing Tangible Results Through Climate Smart Solutions. And this is a $10 million project that authorizes about $7.5 million for landowner contracts targeted towards members of this co-op within Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. And we're targeting climate smart practices for water quality and greenhouse gas reduction. So again, looking forward to that in 25. Go ahead, Susan. And yeah, we just wrapped up a new round of basically it's called the Notice of Funding Opportunity. It's an announcement for new proposals to be submitted to NRCS. In FY24, there was $1.5 billion available for new proposals, and they were funded under the Farm Bill and also the Inflation Reduction Act. Proposals were due this year by July 2, so we have those in and we're in the review process right now. For Pennsylvania, this year we had 8 proposals submitted to the state for review. Pennsylvania is the lead state on 5 of those proposals and the partner state on 3 of them. Altogether, between those 8 proposals, there was a request of $178 million in RCPP projects. So as I mentioned, we're going through the review process right now, and the states will submit their recommendations to national, and national will make the final decision and probably start agreement development later this fall or winter for these selections. And yep, that's my update, and there's my contact information. If there's no questions, then I'll turn it back to Susan.
Questions? No? Okay, and I'd like to just open it up to partners, to those who would like to suggest ideas for future meetings. Denise and I have talked about how can we change things up and make it more interesting for partners maybe in 2025 or their presentations. You know, keeping with the technical mission of this body, that we do need to focus on technical, but I'd like to maybe survey everyone. I'll send something out on what they'd like to hear, other than, you know, we certainly do want to present our programs and our technical trainings and things like that. But if there are suggestions for how we can change things up a little bit, and maybe additional subcommittees were suggested in the past as well, like a wetlands subcommittee, if there are suggestions for how we can improve things, make it more appealing to partners, happy to do so. So let us know. Are there any questions or anything from the audience? Any comments? Anybody want to give updates in the room or otherwise? Okay, well, we appreciate you all hanging in there. We don't usually run past 3 o'clock, but thanks for your time. The next meeting will be October. Oh, these are next year's. Wait a minute. I thought I saw October 24th. Yes, October 24th is our next meeting. This must be 2025 that I have here on the screen. So we'll reach out to you soon. And in the meantime, if you have a chance to review the standards that were sent out and anything else, provide us your input. Thank you.
Pieces.